episode of the Tuesday Jew. This is a space for regular Jewish people who are trying hard to stay real, spiritual, and sane in the middle of a busy modern world. Here we talk honestly about what it really feels like to be a Jew on a random Tuesday afternoon, not just on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and how we can help our Yiddishkeit alive when life is pulling us in 10 different directions at once. Today, in the midweek episode, I want to open up about why I started the Tuesday Jew in the first place. I'm going to share my own journey so you understand where this voice is coming from, so you, my audience, can find pieces of your own life inside my story. If you really want to understand how I became who I am, you have to picture a few different worlds all sitting in the same room. You have to picture Poland and Mexico. You have to picture Texas and Crown Heights. You have to picture Yiddish in the house, Shabbos candles on the table, Passover preparation in the kitchen, and reggae playing in the background. You have to imagine a young man standing in the middle of all that, trying to figure out how these worlds could live inside one person at the same time. And you have to understand something else about me. I've always loved speaking. I've always loved ideas. I've always loved politics, my people, and Judaism. I'm very much an alive kind of person. I'm exuberant. I have a lot of personality and I feel things deeply. And I speak with passion and intensity. For years, people told me, Phil, you have to do a podcast. They would say, you're just like Rush Limbaugh. You have such a you have such a voice. And I said, okay, but I'm not into politics and I don't want to imitate anybody. But because I have that radio voice and a strong personality that people can hear, I have a voice that really wants to come out. This podcast is where I finally gave the voice a home. It's not just about information. It's not just about opinions. It's not just about religion. And it's not just about Jewish history. It's about a voice. It's about saying out loud what many people feel, but don't always know how to express it. It's always taking a life that moves through many different rooms, many different struggles, and many different identities, and trying to make sense of it in a way that is honest and alive. So let's start where it really all began, family. On my mother's side, my family came to Mexico from Galicia, Poland. They were brought with them, where they brought with them many old world Jewish traditions and life. My great great grandfather came to Mexico with his children and his wife from Galicia. They were Belz Hasidim, and my great great grandparents started a shul in Mexico called the Gudazachem, which still exists till today. My great grandmother was a cook in the synagogue. There was a little restaurant there for the men who worked in the area in the 1920s. My grandmother was born in 1933 and raised in that home. Judaism wasn't an idea there. It was the air they breathed. There was Yiddish in the house, there was Shabbos candles, there was real Pesach preparations, and there was warmth and a European seriousness about Yiddishkeit. On my maternal grandfather's side, the story was also one about migration and tradition. My grandfather, Samuel Mandelbaum, came to Mexico in 1929 from a village near Lublin. His father came ahead of the family and literally carried scrap metal on his back before building a business empire in Tampico, Mexico. They lived in a very traditional Jewish life, maybe not Orthodox in the formal way people use the word today, but deeply Jewish. My great grandmother would buy 1,000 eggs before Passover. They made their own wine for Yom Tov from scratch. She would travel to Mexico City to get chickens for the Chagim and the Yom Tovs. There was one rabbi there, from what I understand, and they lived with real seriousness about Jewish life. In 1966, my grandparents moved to McAllen, Texas. Even after that move, they stayed traditional. Their house wasn't strictly kosher, but my grandfather put on tefillin every day. My grandmother lit Shabbos candles. We always had a Shabbos meal. They spoke Yiddish to each other in the home. It felt a very European Heimish home, even in Texas. So from my mother's side, I inherited that deep old world Jewish atmosphere from Galicia to Mexico. Yiddish and Shabbos candles, real Pesach preparations, and a home where being Jewish was simply part of life. But to really understand me, you also have to know something else about my father's family. My father's side is another chapter in the story. His family, the Goldsteins, the Sundocks, the Gellers, the Grosses, have been in America since the 1800s and the early 1900s. We're talking Marshall, Texas, Houston, Brooklyn, an old American Jewish story. On his mother's side, the family came from Russia, and his father's family came from Minsk. And his mother's family also came from Germany in America. My grandfather was born in 1917, and my grandmother was born in 1922 in Houston, Texas. My great grandmother, Minnie Sundock, and her sister Sadie, who married Max Geller, from those branches, and you get the extended family that raised my father. So now we have another line from Minsk into Texas and American South, and from Marshall and Houston into the broader American Jewish world. Here's the key piece. My father didn't just quietly inherit a nice from life. He came back to Yiddishkeit. He made a conscious move toward Torah and mitzvahs. His journey back to his roots was very important enough that GEM, Jewish Educational Media, made a video about our family. They interviewed my father's rabbi, Shalom Ber Shapiro, and spoke about my father and us, and how he returned to Judaism in 1981. It wasn't automatic. It was a decision, a process, a teshuvah story. That decision is a huge reason why my brother and I are religious today. So I am not speaking to you as someone who grew up in a perfect, polished, ready-made, firm bubble. I'm the son of a man who came back, and the grandson and the great-grandson of families who carried Yiddishkeit in different ways. My mother's family from Mexico, Galicianer, Belzer Schulz, and scrap metals, and through Minsk and Marshall in Houston, Texas, and Brooklyn, New York, where my family originated from Lubavitch, and Minsk, Russia. The Tuesday Jew is growing out of that soil. Now let's move into Crown Heights, where things get complicated. My teenage years in Crown Heights were confusing. My parents were divorced by the time I was 11, and I didn't move there to become Chabad. I moved there because I wanted to be close to my father. That's the truth. I was a teenager trying to figure out where I belonged, and I landed in a world that I didn't really understand. I grew up in Dallas, in an upper middle class environment, in a modern Orthodox shul. This was the 1980s when Orthodoxy outside New York was still developing. The Judaism I knew came from rabbis like Rabbi Rodin and from modern Orthodox atmosphere. Crown Heights was still a different planet. The style, the culture, the expectations, and the intensity were all new to me. At the same time, I had a Rebbe in Yeshiva, Rabbi Zach Lakovsky, who became like a father to me. And we still speak every day after 40 years. I learn with him once a week. He gave me structure, and he still does, in Judaism at a time when I needed it badly. Life with my father and stepmother was hard, and my father was tough. Having that Rebbe wasn't just about learning, it was about survival. But socially, I wasn't trying to fit into a community that wasn't my natural world. Coming from a Texas country club type of upbringing into a tight Hasidic neighborhood was a huge jump. And yet, slowly, I did come to love parts of Chabad. I loved the community. I loved many of my rabbis. I loved my friends and my mashpia, Rabbi Spielman. I loved the Rebbe deeply. I saw the Rebbe many times, and I received dollars from him. Those moments stayed and stay with me still. But I never felt exactly what many people felt, that everything in life could be reduced to one idea and one leader. That wasn't me. I liked learning from different people. I liked exploring. I noticed that a lot of people around me didn't really want anything outside Chabad. For them, it worked. For me, felt limiting. So I was already living the two weddings at the same time. Life becoming more serious, but also needing oxygen and a wider world. After Lubavitch Yeshiva, I went to Kingsborough Community College around 1991. That place lit up another part of me. I studied mental health and human services because I've always wanted to help people. But Kingsborough wasn't just academics. It was social, multicultural, and musical. I was vice president of the Jewish Club, treasurer of another, public relations for the Caribbean Club. I was in the Puerto Rican Club, Dominican Club, Italian Club, Greek Club, everything generally cultural, that didn't feel like contradictions to me. It felt natural. This was where music took hold of me in a serious way. I learned how to DJ throughout the college, throughout my college radio stations. I got into techno, house music, and reggae. Then, living in Brooklyn with my Latin Jewish background, I heard reggae for the first time. Reggae did something to me. I connected strongly to the Caribbean culture, to reggae and dancehall. I started DJing in reggae clubs and hanging around Caribbean clubs. From 18 until 36, that world was a big part of my life. Even later in Israel, I was DJing in reggae clubs. But all of that time, I was still keeping Shabbos. That tension really defines me. Thursday night, I could be deep in the reggae world, and Friday morning, I'd be on the way back to get ready for Shabbos. Music and mitzvahs, reggae and spirituality, the club and the candle. After Kingsborough, I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I studied pre-law and criminal justice, and from 1994 to 2000, I was going to school part-time and working full-time as a paralegal and a process server, mostly in commercial real estate and landlord and tenant law. That opened up a world, New York business law and the whole who's who scene. I dealt with high-profile clients, people like Cindy Crawford, Randy Gerber, Douglas Durst, Ian Schrager, and many others. I went to hotel openings and fancy events there was a phase in my 20s where I honestly thought I was hot stuff. I was social, connected, and yes, a bit of a shameless name dropper. And still, I kept my Jewish life going. Around 21, I started putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. I got more serious. I had regular shiurim on Shabbos. I stayed connected to my Rebbe and Mashpia. So it wasn't religious versus the world. It was the law and nightlife on one side, Torah and Tefillin on the other, all happening in the same person. Then Gimel Tammuz changed a lot. It changed the community, it changed Crown Heights, it changed me. I saw the split, Meshichas and non-Meshichas, infighting, tensions in shuls, uncertainties about the future. I was in my early 20s, watching kids slowly go off the derech, seeing drugs enter more openly, seeing things change. On some levels, things looked stronger, but on other levels, something had cracked. At the same time, my own observance actually got stronger for about 10 years. From 1994 until I left Crown Heights in 2004, I became more serious about Shabbos and Yom Tov, more committed to learning, more locked into Tefillin and Shiurim. But inside I was thinking, I began to feel, and I needed a living Rav, a living Rebbe, a teacher who could speak to the generation I was actually standing in. With technology and with new emotional realities, with today's confusions, I respected the Rebbe deeply, I respected Chabad deeply, but I couldn't ignore that the need for a living guide. I also easily said that this out loud. I couldn't easily say this out loud in Crown Heights because I didn't want to lose friends or be pushed out. So I carried a lot of this quietly. Dating during all of this was also difficult. I didn't fit cleanly into the Chabad box, and I also didn't fully belong in the modern circles. I loved Torah and Yiddishkeit, but I didn't fit neatly into any box. And in 2004, I left New York and went back to Houston, Texas. That move changed my life again. There I connected to the United Orthodox Synagogue and to Rabbi Joseph Radinsky. He became like a grandfather to me. He wasn't just the official Orthodox rabbi of Houston. He nurtured, studied me, and helped me focus. He knew my background. He knew the Geller family. We became very close. I stayed with him for a couple of years because going to Israel, and when I came back in 2009, I reconnected with him even deeper. I became his shamish, his right-hand person, and eventually his caretaker until his passing in 2016. He was one of the most important people in my life. Religiously and personally, he gave me perspective, focus, and warmth. Then came Israel. After Gush Katif in 2005, something in me said, I need to be in Israel. I worked on Aliyah and eventually went to Yeshivat Hamiftar in Efrat, connected with Rabbi Riskin and Rabbi Bravender. Israel opened up everything up even more. In Efrat and beyond, I had friends from different kinds of Orthodox backgrounds. I started exploring Breslov, Chabad in a new way, Rav Kook with different Hasidic groups, Litvish communities, places like Kiryat Sefer, and other religious areas in Eideh Haredis world. I spent Shabbos in different communities and soaked things in. That's when I really understood my hashkafa as a salad bar. By what I mean that I liked a little bit of everything. That's true. Hashem gave me gifts to different schools of Torah. Every Rebbe, every Rav, every tradition has something to teach. I'm not interested in pretending only one lane exists. Is if there is truth there is truth across many lanes. My center of gravity is Hasidic. That's my background and my emotional language. I'm more drawn to warmth, feeling, inner work, and spirituality than to pure rationalism. But I deeply love Musar. In fact, I think Musar and Hasidus should never have been split as much as they were. Musar gives discipline, ethical clarity. Hasidus gives warmth and inner life. In my mind, they belong together. That's how I live till today. I put on Chabad tefillin. I daven with a bell siddur. On Shabbos, I learn different kinds of Hasidus and Musar. I go to Kollel in the evenings and learn 3 or 4 hours a day. I learn Hashkafa, Musar, and works of people like Rav Moshe Shapiro and Aruch Shulchan and other sorts of Torah. I've been doing Daf Yomi with Eli Stefanski for several years. Judaism is very important and very central in my life. And yes, even in Israel, I kept DJing. Thursday nights in the reggae world, and then Friday morning back on the bus to Jerusalem to get ready for Shabbos. For me, reggae and spirituality have always had a connection. That music spoke to something deep inside me. By 2009, I came back to America. And then I came back. I saw a world that had changed. Smartphones, iPhones, apps, dating apps, a new dating culture, new materialism, and a new distraction. That's really the point where this first chapter of my life stops, and the next one, the Tuesday Jew in the smartphone era, begins. Everything I've shared until now is the foundation, the family roots on both sides, my father's religious journey and the Gem story, Crown Heights and Confusion, Kingsborough and DJ Live, John Jay and Law, Gimel Tammuz and Communal Shifts, Houston and Rabbi Radinsky, Israel, Efrat, Hamiftar, Chabad, Breslov, Rav Kook, Bells, Musar, and my salad bar Hashkafa. All that is Act 1. Act 2 is what happens when a Jew like that comes back to America in 2009 and suddenly has to face a whole new world of technology, dating, materialism, and spiritual confusion. And that's where the Tuesday Jew really begins to speak. Best, next step. Next step, we will have the second part of this conversation on next week. And don't forget to tune in on Friday for Parshas Akev and the Tuesday Jew podcast. Thank you and have a great week.